Welcome to Create, Build, Manage, the Entrepreneur's Toolbox.
Welcome to a special edition of Create, Build, and Manage. I'm your host, Bryan Weatherford. All around the country, all industries, everybody seems to be looking to increase the talent level that they have. That includes police departments. You might be surprised to know that, but hey, there's a lot of different jobs at police departments, and there's also a lot of police departments out there. Today here in studio, we have with us, we're going to be talking to multiple police officers here with one great department. That's the Arlington Police Department in Arlington, Texas. First guest today, Sargeant Richard Coleman. Sergeant, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm well, thanks for having me.
Arlington, Texas.
Yes,
now,
sir.
A lot of people have heard of Arlington, Texas. They don't know a lot about it. Arlington is midway between Dallas and Fort Worth, correct?
It is, yes, sir.
You've been in Arlington a while yourself?
I have been familiar with Arlington since I was about 4th or 5th grade.
Oh, okay. So you know a little bit about it. Well, I bet I pulled some statistics you may not know, just to give people across the country watching this today a little insight as to exactly how big Arlington is. Arlington is bigger than a lot of cities that people don't even realize that. For example, Arlington's the 7th biggest city in the state of Texas. Big state, number 7. Arlington is the 49th biggest city in the entire country. Arlington is bigger than a lot of towns that you may not realize. Arlington is bigger than Orlando, Florida. It's bigger than Tampa, Florida. It's bigger than Anaheim, California. It's bigger than Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's a big deal. 405,000 people. Got to have a lot of people to police that town, and that's why we're here today. How long have you been on board with the force?
So I've worked for Arlington since 2010, so about 13 years.
13 years. Have you done the same thing? What are you doing? Let me ask you 2 questions.
Sure.
What'd you do 13 years ago, and what are you doing now?
So 13 years ago, I was a new rookie patrol officer, and right now I'm a sergeant. I supervise our personnel and recruiting unit.
The personnel and recruiting unit.
Yes.
Now, are you one of these kids that grew up wanting to be a police officer, or when did you skew that direction where you thought that's something I'd like to do for a living?
So I've always known I wanted to be an officer. As a kid, my mother was a cop, and so I kind of grew up around the profession. I didn't go to school for it, but it's something that I've always been interested in.
And then got there.
I did, yes, sir.
And so far, so good.
Yes, sir.
What would you say was the biggest surprise that you found? You grew up with it in the family, but when you got in there yourself, was there anything that stood out like, oh, I didn't realize this, or was it pretty much everything you thought?
The biggest thing is just the opportunities that are within law enforcement, especially within an agency. Most people think about policing and they think about, arresting people, putting people in jail, but there's lots of different opportunities within a law enforcement agency that I was not aware of.
Do you think that maybe even in Arlington, do you think with the Arlington Police Department, there's opportunities that maybe don't exist in other departments, or specifically, there's other departments that are bigger that you can kind of get lost? Do you feel that with Arlington being the size, just the city and the department itself, maybe gives you an opportunity for advancements you may not get elsewhere?
I do. I always say, it's kind of my own motto, is that I believe Arlington's big enough to where you can do the things you want to do as far as opportunities, and it's small enough to where you kind of know everybody that works for the agency.
Nice.
So it gives you kind of that balance of working for a larger and smaller agency.
You mentioned you're not doing the same thing you were when you first started. Does the APD, Arlington Police Department, do they like to promote from within?
They do.
Which helps.
I'll say we promote probably 5 to 15 sergeants per year. So those opportunities are there.
And that's all from within?
Yes.
So if you want to advance, the opportunities are there. But if you're happy doing what you're doing, the opportunities are there for that as well.
Yes, sir.
As we sit here today, I mentioned at the top of the show, we're talking about how you're looking to up the talent level within the department. There's positions that are open, or maybe there's positions that are coming open. When you're looking for new police officers, is there a certain type of person? People might be surprised to know that you don't have to have a degree in criminal justice to become a police officer.
One of the big buzzwords in law enforcement is diversity, but diversity doesn't always also include race. It's also diversity of experience and also diversity of educational backgrounds. And so for me, I was an accounting major and also a computer information systems major. And so I try to show that and highlight that there's room for different majors other than criminal justice. And so we have opportunities. How I'm dressed is how I normally dress for work. I don't wear a uniform. Now I dress like this. And so a lot of people are surprised to hear that, is that, I was an accounting major and I spent a lot of time as an officer doing statistics.
Doing statistics?
Yes, sir.
Wow. And then now you're out on the recruiting end of things.
Yes.
So what does that involve? What's a typical day for you when you're not sitting in a TV studio? What are you doing?
So our office manages the hiring process for the Arlington Police Department. So we coordinate the initial interviews that applicants take. We also coordinate the physical assessment that applicants go through. We coordinate. So our hiring process consists of 4 phases. You have an initial phase, which is an interview. You have a physical assessment, and that's all part of phase 1. We have a background. You go through a polygraph, psychological examination, and a medical, and that's phase 2. You have a background investigation, which is an extensive background conducted by an investigator, and then you have a final interview that's conducted by our command staff. And so we coordinate that hiring process. I also supervise our recruiting efforts.
So where do you go? Where are you going fishing when you're looking for new recruits? Where's a good place?
We go all over, and some of those places we don't like to reveal, but we go to schools, and we go to colleges, we go to military bases. We've tried to increase our digital footprint, so we recruit online, we do different things like that.
Mm-hmm. And just, do you go through periods to where you crank it up a notch, or there are different times where you realize, hey, we're a little soft over here, let's crank it up and try to get some more applicants in, or is it pretty steady year round?
Our process is pretty steady year round. It gets cranked up as an academy date nears, because we have a little bit of pressure to try to fill those academy classes. But for the most part, our hiring process is steady year round. Let's
talk about that just a second. I'm glad you brought that up, academy date. So there's a strict certain times a year, here's where we're going to start a new class and here's where we go?
Yes.
What is that date if you're not giving away the
So for our basic academy class, we usually have one in January, and we also have one in January, and we also have one in July.
Okay, and so they're spread out a little bit. If I come rolling in February, I miss the January class, but frankly, it gives me an opportunity to get in shape for that second phase to get ready for the July class.
Yes, and for our lateral class, we have one in April, and then we also have one in September, I believe.
And the lateral class,
October,
does that mean other officers within, or is it from other departments? What's the differentiation between someone just coming in fresh versus lateral? What does lateral mean?
So our basic academy is made up of people that don't have law enforcement experience.
Okay.
So they might be a college graduate. They might have military experience. And then our lateral academy is an officer who is currently working in law enforcement, but just doesn't work for our agency. And so they kind of laterally transfer to the Arlington Police Department. Are
there different places around the police departments themselves where jobs are posted? I guess everything's digital now. If I'm already an officer with APD, can I go to a web page and say, here's what's coming up? How would I know that here's an opportunity I might be interested in? If I'm already on board, how would I know that there's some other opportunities to pursue?
You mean within our agency?
Yeah, within your agency. If someone is already, say they're a patrol officer, and then they're looking to go a different direction, how would they know what's out there?
So we have an internal hiring process for specialized units. Arlington has almost about 50 specialized units.
Interesting.
And so what happens is when there's an opening, an email gets sent out to all the officers saying that this is the position opening, and you have an opportunity to submit a one-page resume and memo speaking about your interests and qualifications for that position. And then you are then scheduled for an interview.
Does it get into situations, I mean, it would have to where people within the department, they've been working together, and in their own way, they're in competition with each other to go for another position. How does that play into things?
It does play into things, but I always say I'm only competing against myself. You know,
there you go.
I believe the opportunities are there, and a lot of times you're interviewing for different positions before the actual interview, and so a lot of times your work can speak for itself. The difference between interviewing for an internal position opposed to somebody coming from outside is that you've been interviewing since you first started your career, and so a lot of times if you work hard every day, your work speaks for itself. And so for us, it's like, well, how much emphasis do you put on this 15-minute interview? And for myself, I'm not willing to rely on just that interview. I'm going to rely on the hard work that I put in before I got to that interview.
The hard work that you put in, I'm sure, is noticed by others within the department. Do they get to a situation to where they see someone in this department that they realize this would be good for you to come over this direction, and they actually talk to someone, would you be interested in pursuing something else here within the department?
That does happen. Mentorship is very important for the police department. And so sometimes it just takes a little bit of recognition from somebody that sees something in an officer and can maybe help shape and shift their career in a certain direction.
Yeah, it's got to make you feel good too. I mean, in any job you have, you like to hear from superiors that you're doing a great job, and you know you're doing a great job, but they want you to look at advancing and going further. Even if you don't want to go that direction, it's a nice thing to hear.
Yes, sir.
Wouldn't you think? Well, I appreciate you coming in with us today. You know, it's just fascinating because so many people don't think of police departments as major employers, but they are. I mean, you're in a town over 400,000 people. It takes a lot of people to keep Arlington, Texas safe, and you and everyone there at the department do a great job with that. And there's so many different roles within the department. You're always looking to bring in new recruits or lateral moves. See, I learned some stuff from you today myself. People looking to be here. Well, it's fascinating to me. I think the number one thing I took away from this is the fact you grew up in a police family. You had, at first, you didn't think you were going to go that direction. You wanted to go the accounting direction. You get to dress like an accountant, but you get to be a police officer at the same time with one of the best departments, not just in the state, but the whole country, Arlington, Texas. Thank you, Sergeant. Appreciate you being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.